Well, hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us again. As you know, I've been talking about this Marilyn Manson situation for months now, and I've been talking to different people, interviewing different people who dated Manson, who knew Manson, and giving some of their insights on him and on the situation. And so we're going to talk to somebody today who basically has some recollections, some insights about the situation, and I kind of just want to let it speak for itself and talk to him about his experience and where he's coming from and what he saw and experienced when he was around Marilyn Manson and around Evan Rachel Wood for a time. And so anyway, thanks for joining me. This is Zac, and I'm sure that our audience is going to notice what's going on in the background because it's really interesting. So Zac is you're a graphic designer, is that right?
Yeah, I'm an art director, designer, and artist, fine artist.
Yeah, you can see that in the background. I'm really thrilled actually that you have something like really interesting for people to look at while we're doing this interview, because most of the time my backgrounds suck. And so anyway, I appreciate you. I appreciate that. That's really cool. And we'll talk more about that maybe at the end.
Okay.
But anyway, so, I just to tell our audience that you have been reluctant, I think would be a good way to say it, to come forward and say some of the things you're going to say tonight. And like my other guests that I've had, Pola and Lisa and Paula, like everybody that I've talked to so far has been reluctant, but because they actually don't want to enter the limelight, and they don't want to be out there talking about this as controversial as it is. But I feel like everybody kind of has the same feeling, which is that they just can't be silent any longer. So I'm just kind of curious what your background is with Manson.
Right. As I said, I'm an art director, designer, and artist. And I met Manson for the first time in 2003 in Philadelphia. I met him because at the time, from 2001 through 2008, I was administrator and co-owner of MansonUSA.com, which was a big fan site. And we had a forum and everything else, and we did several exclusive interviews with him. And so I did like a lot of the graphics and things like that for the site with my good friend, Alex, who was the person that started the whole thing. So I got lucky, and I met Manson for the first time after a show in Philly, and it was awesome. Because I was a huge fan at the time. I was 21. I'm 39 now. And so that was the first time. And then I met him again in like 2004, 5-ish, I believe. And after that, it was 2007 and 2008 was the primary time that we spent a significant amount of time after shows and backstage and on the tour bus and things like that.
So there was this period of time where basically, because you're president of this fan club and whatever, that you're basically allowed to go on tour with him, right?
Yeah. We had for the tour from 2007 and 2008, which was called Rape of the World Tour. We had the irony, right?
He must be guilty. He must be guilty. Because of
exactly. We had all access passes. So that was pretty awesome to just experience that. It's I think back on it now, and it's like just memories that I cherish. It was quite the experience.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad that you're bringing this up and being very above board about the context of all this. Because I can already hear like what some people are going to say is, oh my God, like you're talking to the president, this fan club, and he's talking about how much he loved it. Yeah, that's right. We're talking to a Marilyn Manson fan. Okay. But, the cat just ruined it. Hold on 1 second. All right. I'm just going to pick up with that. No, but people are going to say, oh yeah, you're talking to a Marilyn Manson fan. So of course he's going to defend him. We're not trying to hide anything here. Okay. So, but I really do. And I'm glad you said that and everything. And again, like we've been talking for a while, you and I behind the scenes, and this is you've been reluctant to do this. So I just want people to be aware. Yeah. We're above board about the fact this is a Marilyn Manson fan. He's about to tell us something, But I think you're telling the truth, and I'm curious. So, you said that when we talked earlier that you were around one of these periods of time when you were on tour with them, that you were
Right.
around and Rachel Wood. This is when they were dating. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So the tour that I was primarily spent the most amount of time with Manson, 2007, 2008. That was when Evan was on tour with him. So I had met her on that tour, and then most of the times that we hung out backstage or on the bus or whatever, she was there. Usually it was a small group of us, my friends, and we were all part of the site, and we were primarily hanging out with just him and Evan. The band was typically on their own bus, and we would hang out with them as well, but for the most part, after the shows, if everything with the show went well and Manson was in a good mood, which understandably sometimes he's not, I can get it as an artist, we would go back and hang out with them, and we would be there until 2-3 in the morning, and it was quite a bit of time. I'd say probably 20 shows total for that tour. So I mean, you think about amounts of times like 3-4 hours a shot, so that's a good amount of time, I would say.
Okay, so you're saying that you hung out with him like 20 times on tour, sometimes very late at night, sometimes
Yeah.
like after the show, and say 3 to 4 hours, at a time. So, I mean, we're talking like hours and hours and hours of hanging out with these people in circumstances where they were, I guess, tired, maybe intoxicated. Sort of sounds fairly like intimate, right? It's not just
like a very like comfortable setting. There wasn't like groups of people there where he had to put on a certain persona and act a certain way in the public, like if he'd do signings and things like that. It wasn't like that. It was very, I guess you could say, intimate, like you said, and they were very relaxed, and yeah, it was just a very chill environment. So yeah.
And you hung out and you were around Evan Rachel Wood a lot, right?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
with man.
Yeah,
was she with us the whole time when you were around?
Primarily, yes. There was a couple shows in like 2008, the second leg of the tour, where she wasn't there, but pretty much all 2007 she was there, and at least part of 2008 she was. So yeah, I mean, it would even go to the point of we would see her. We would actually be like, backstage while Manson was getting ready and things like that for the show. And we would see her backstage, or we would see her outside on the back parts of the venue. And we'd be like smoking cigarettes and things like that and just talking. And, that was, to be honest, I liked her a lot at that point. She was.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're saying that you would have conversations with her. Like, it wasn't just, oh, she's over there with Manson, but like you were interacting on a more one-on-one. Okay. Basis.
Yeah. We would have just like, regular conversations about a variety of things. And never did I see anything. Never did I have her even seem sad or bothered, or she certainly wasn't forced to be there or anything like that. She was, in so many words, having the time of her life, in my opinion.
Did you see, so you saw her and Manson together, right? And
yes,
a fairly significant, you said, like 20 days of like 3 to 4 hours, do you around them a lot when they were together, right? And a kind of a small format?
Right. After the shows, they would be together. To be honest, Manson had her around like most of the time, because he was, he wanted her to be around. It was like, in my opinion, they seemed to have a good relationship. She he enjoyed her company. He was never short or angry or like demanding or trying to get her to stay here when she didn't want to be there. She knew exactly what she was doing. She enjoyed herself, and, which as things have gone now is a completely different view that she puts off now.
So when you were around them, did you ever see him being controlling or mean or domineering, or did she ever seem like she was like uncomfortable with him or afraid or controlled or anything like that?
No, I never saw anything like that. I never saw aggression. I never saw her being, like I said, she was never upset, and I'm talking like even times, like I said, when we were just talking with just her, it was like our small group of people. She was there and we'd be talking, and like she never seemed upset. She never seemed bothered by anything. Now I know people can like hide that sort of thing, but it was after this certain amount of time, we were like regulars in their company. So, I would like to say that there was a good amount of comfort, between parties. So, I never saw anything even like that at all, which is why when she came forward, I was completely shocked, to be honest. If I could go back at that time and someone would say like, oh, well, he's being accused of these allegations from Evan Rachel Wood, I'd be like, what? Like, you know what I mean? Like I never would have believed that would happen just based on their relationship and, what I saw.
And I thank you. And I think that, again, kind of anticipating some of the things that people will say in the comments. Yeah, I mean, yes, understood. And you just said it, that of course people can hide things. The question is, though, like, can people hide things to the extent that you, over the course of days and hours in their company, when they're tired at the end of the day, when they let their guard down, when maybe they're intoxicated or whatever, and you're still not seeing any undertones of any kind of abusiveness on his part, or any kind of like anger or lashing out or fear with her? I mean, having been in circumstances where I, have been around in abusive situations or whatever, like there's still like things going on. There's still dynamic. And it sounds like what you're saying, unless I'm putting words in your mouth, please tell me, is that you never picked up on anything like that, right?
No, absolutely. Pretty much exactly what you said. I mean, I never picked up on any of that. And, I'd like to think that I'm pretty good about picking up on emotions like that from people. And, I never thought that ever. Like, it really seemed like she was having the time of her life. I mean, you figure she was 20, and she was traveling the world and just having a blast. I mean, she was a fan of his before she even got with him. So,
oh, really? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. She says she plays it off a little bit differently. But, there's interviews that she's done where she's talked about her being like, a fan of his music and just how he made her feel like free and like positive towards like her, creativity and just the freedom of his like no judgment sort of outlook, that's the thing about Manson. He's, very open when it comes to, doing anything creatively, or just if you want to act a certain way, he's not the type of person that you have to like, there might be people that have had situations where you feel like you have to walk on eggshells or something like that with him. But I personally never experienced that with him.
So I would say, or you never observed this like crazy megalomaniacal
right character? Exactly. Yeah. I never never experienced that, you know. He's always a very
stay in a dark room with blackout curtains where you had to wear cave lamps to get.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that he does like a darker space, but you know, I typically like a darker space. So,
See that.
you know, what does that really say? I mean, it doesn't mean that we're sitting back there in the dark, like not being able to see anything. And like, I certainly don't think it's a threatening environment, you know? So,
did you ever see, so in the time that you were around them, did you, just to get really in the weeds, did you ever see him behave toward her in any way in which you were kind of like, you know, I wouldn't want someone talking to my sister or my mom that way, like mean, or there was any kind of a like slightly
no,
domineering or chauvinistic or controlling, anything like that?
no, absolutely not. I mean, he, in my opinion, he truly loved her. I mean, we're talking about a guy that got divorced, and he wrote an entire album that was basically like, she was his muse. You know, for someone to do that as an artist, you have to be very, very into someone to go to those lengths, you know. So,
but you know what people are going to say? They're going to say, well, yeah, that's right. He was into her, but he was also this like monster. He was, you know, torturing her.
right.
And all of this, but but it sounds like what you're saying, like you never saw any shade of anything, anything threatening at all.
No, I never even saw her or saw him, snap at her or, you know, like I said, no aggression whatsoever towards her. There's the one photo that I showed you where we were on the tour bus, and, you know, he actually wanted her to be in the photo, the one that he's holding her, and they're posing together, you know. So it was like, I think his assistant at the time snapped a photo of that, and, you know, he wanted her to be in the photo. So it was like, you know, it wasn't like, you know, get over here, be in this photo sort of like attitude. It was like, hey, come over here, you know, like just very like loving, you know. That was the opinion that I have, is that he was loving towards her, you know, and he actually cared. I never saw him get angry or, you know, certainly not violent or anything like that, you know.
In the time, and you spent some time, you said, alone with her. I mean, where it'd just be like the two of you hanging out. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, that was primarily, like I said, for example, even like through certain shows, like we'd, you know, take a smoke break or something, and we'd go outside, of the venue, and we'd be like, hey, she's out there, like, you know, smoking, and we'd just like shoot the shit for a little bit. So there was a variety of times that, you know, it was only her. You know, I can't, in my opinion, like if someone feels abused, she hit it awfully well, because I never saw her even being in a bad mood back there. It was like she was, like I said, having the time of her life. I mean, so yeah, I mean, it's complete.
Fearful of Manson, or kind of like, you know, like sort of like you know, I've known women in sort of abusive circumstances where like you can tell they're watching their words, or kind of trying to manage their partner, and kind of, you know, that sort of thing.
No,
you seem carefree.
Yeah, no, nothing like that. You know, and I've known people who have been in like what I would say abusive relationships, or even if it's not physical or if it's verbal or whatever, and completely different temperament from people that I've known in those situations. Yeah, I mean, she was never like careful about what she said. It wasn't like, oh, I got to be careful what I say, or I'm going to get Manson's going to be mad at me, or, you know, it was nothing like that whatsoever. She was very open, and always typically always in a good mood, seemed like it to me. And I'm sure that my friends would attest to that as well. So, yeah.
So when, people like the Mansons, one time, I guess, brief assistant, what was his name? Dan Cleary, or when Wes Borland, when they claimed that everything that was said is true, and they saw, and Evan Rachel Wood had like an aura of darkness around her, and all like
Yeah.
That just doesn't agree with you at all, based on what you saw.
No. Even come to talk. I don't even remember Dan Cleary there personally. I think he was a guitar tech or something like that. But yeah, he was. I never even really saw him around. It wasn't like he was never like hanging out with all of us or anything like that. Like, he wasn't an assistant.
Probably, it's more likely that you spent more time around Manson and Rachel Wood than Dan Cleary, perhaps.
I mean, yeah, I would say that probably, at least in that time frame. And I think that he was only around for a certain amount of time.
He was the guitar tech at that point. It was only later that he worked for Manson as a personal assistant for a brief period of time. And a lot of people don't know that, and so they conflate the two, and they'll say, "Oh, even his personal assistant said that Evan Rachel Wood seemed really dark in that period." Well, that's not when he was the personal assistant. That's when he was the guitar tech and not really hanging out with them. But anyway.
Yeah. Right.
But like Wes Borland, people like that, not that what's going through their head or why they would say stuff like that, but that just doesn't, that's just not your experience then, just of seeing her as being someone who seemed like oppressed or troubled or in a cloud of darkness or anything like that.
No, absolutely not.
I don't know much. I don't actually follow all of this stuff in music. So I don't know like Wes Borland or even what his deal is. It seems like almost like people just want to jump on the bandwagon with some of this stuff.
As far as I know, Wes Borland was never even truly in the band. I believe he played a show or two shows.
Oh, really?
At like a festival or something like that. So he was never around, like, the way he put it out. Like, it was like he was around, like, on tour, like, several shows, and like experienced all this stuff with them, and like
it promoted it. It was like, oh, this guy who was in Marilyn Manson's band says that it's all
exactly. And I believe that Manson like didn't want him in. So in my opinion, there's like a bitterness there with him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. After that happened, I know Manson like kicked him out because originally he was gonna have him in. And I don't personally know what happened exactly with them, but after that point, there was definitely I would say just bitterness towards Manson. So, and that doesn't surprise me.
I'm glad you said that or brought that out, because, that's the thing that a lot of people don't get is like, once someone is accused of stuff like this, then it's such an opportunity then for people. Everybody loves free media. Everybody. It's some kind of like, it's some kind of basic human thing, and we're not, any different per se. We're talking on YouTube, but like some people, like they think, okay, he's been accused of being a rapist. He must have done it. So I'm gonna make my little statement so I can get my 15 minutes, just like Phoebe Bridgers, who's now being sued for defamation by someone. But anyway, it's a whole other thing. But it is very tempting. And I think that's what happens is that I'm not necessarily saying these are bad people. I think what happens is they think, oh, Marilyn Manson, he's a rapist. So I might as well jump on that bandwagon and get some get out of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it makes it an easy shot to take.
Yeah.
If you have any pent up hostility towards someone and they're already, it's like kicking them when they're down and just jumping on because, at that point, they have so much being thrown at them that it's like, what's he going to be able to do if I come out and say this?
Yes,
you know what I mean?
I think they also feel morally justified because it's easy to say, oh, well, he must be a rapist. Look at what Evan Rachel Wood, these people, what they're saying about him. So it's not like I'm attacking an innocent man. I'm just helping, right? I'm just adding more, validation to that. And so I can see why people are jumping on it. And then once something like this happens, everybody's reaching back in their mind to think of like some instance where he said something, off key, or he did something weird or whatever. And it's very, I can just imagine that if which I probably won't be, but if I were ever in a situation where I were accused of something, and I think about all the people in my past who've been around when I've said or done something that was like, oh,
Right.
and then
Right.
you paint some kind of demented portrait of someone.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be easy at that point for people to, and like you, I think back on that and I'm like, man, like if the same thing happened, obviously I'm not, famous or anything like that, like Manson. So it wouldn't be the same scale, but I can think like, I'm sure there's people that, aren't happy with me that would, jump on the bandwagon very, they would just do it just because why not?
Right.
And, the other thing is like Manson's entire career, he's been sort of the poster boy for blame. I mean, he's been blamed for everything. So it's an easy shot for people to take. And if someone doesn't like him, and people are free not to like him or whatever, they had a bad experience with him. It's just like, it's so easy for them to just say it because people aren't going to question. They're just going to, oh yeah, like here's another person that said this, like there's no critical thinking with it.
Well, and I think too, like people haven't, like we haven't caught up to the fact that the media, the media now, it just changes everything so much. And
Yep.
so like people are still like living like in the sort of mindset of like 10 or 20 years ago, and not now, where this stuff just as soon as the match is lit, it is off to the races. And so it's gonna, I hope people wake up to that at some point. But I feel like Manson is really one of the, what's the phrase, a canary in a coal mine on that. And
Right.
he's always been like the low hanging fruit. Right.
Yep.
And so even with the sex stuff and this sort of Me Too shit, not that all of it is right, but what we're seeing manifested here with this, like this Manson case and some of the others, it's like, okay, it's with Manson, but I just wonder where it's going to be in 10 years of like, corporations and businesses and different things. People are just, it's just like, as soon as someone alleges something, then that's
it's
it.
scary. It's scary. Just especially like the lack of critical thinking that people have in general. People are so quick to believe anything just because people said it. Whether they're women or men, regardless. I think that people should always be very careful and look at both sides and, come up with a good viewpoint on it. That's not like, oh, the media said it, like I'm going to believe it, or even just, people, and with, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say with the accusers as a group, a lot of people think, as you've covered in other videos, like they're not just random women, like they all knew each other. They all, articulated a plan. So it's not like just random people coming out and voicing these opinions or these experiences. It's all, in my opinion, fabricated, at least to the most extent. And, they knew that in numbers, it's especially hard to defend.
Yeah, it was well coordinated with the timing. Yeah. And, I understand too, you're talking about the reasons why people fall for this stuff. There's something just on the basic sort of evolutionary level that when we see a woman crying and saying someone has abused her, like,
yeah.
And we see, so Esme Bianco and Evan Rachel Wood, when they're sniffling through their testimony in the California Assembly, and they're trying to get this rape legislation passed and everything and stuff. I mean, it takes some restraint to see through that and to not just be like, oh my God, but I I think actually coming at this as a woman, I can say as a woman that I think people would be pretty surprised sometimes as to how easy it is to fake emotion and to fake tears, and also how when people are a little messed up in the head or they're incentivized, that they can bend reality to suit their impression, to suit their recollections. Like I don't know what Evan Rachel Wood actually believes happened to her. I don't know if she, I believe she's lying. Does she know she's lying?
Yeah.
I don't know. We need
it's hard to
Freud
say
that or something.
yeah. I mean, in my opinion, she seems like a completely different person.
You mean then when you knew her back then?
Yeah. From when I knew her then, to at least the persona she puts off now, she just seems like a completely different person. The way she dresses, the way she acts. To be honest, she lost her cool factor, in my opinion. She was actually fun back then, and now.
What was she? Since bringing up, what was she? Since you were around her some, what was she like? Or if someone said, "Hey, you hung out with Evan Rachel Wood," what was she like back then?
I would say she's fun. Like a typical 20-year-old or whatever. She was young. She was happy. She was always pretty talkative. She was never quiet or like, timid or anything like that. I mean, you could tell that she was an actress. She was comfortable in front of people and talking, and, she never seemed shy or anything like that. It's actually funny because I would say Manson was more shy than she was. And yet, there's Manson on stage doing his shows, but he's much more, low key, I'd say. That one photo that I sent you was a joke when we were backstage with the Ass to Ass, which was the wife of my one friend. That just kind of shows you like her mind state, and like it was all fun. It was a fun environment, and that shows her attitude back then. I mean, could you imagine her doing that now? No way. She would never do that. So, just a completely different person now, in my opinion. Now, I know people grow up and everything, but, I think back to myself from then, and, I've, maybe matured a little bit, but like, I'm not a completely different person that I was then. So either it's some kind of act, or she has like some type of mental issues going on that it's really hard to say. Like there's also the aspect of her with her current ex or whatever, where she's blaming him for abuse. So, there's a lot of this stuff that I think is all connected, that a lot of people, unless you look into it, you don't really see the underlying connections.
Right. And you have to, and it almost sounds like some kind of crazy conspiracy theory if you're not plugged into this, or you haven't looked into it. I mean, because once you actually look into it, then it's kind of like, oh, this is obviously ridiculous. Right. But actually, and again, when the media reports it as like there are like 15 accusers against Manson, like it's like, oh, well, there's this many people accusing, so it must be true. And in Manson's case, it's just when you look at it, then you see the problems in it. And you see too that this was an organized, I don't like to use the word conspiracy because it sounds like I'm talking about like JFK or something, but like it was a conspiracy in the sense that these women were recruited by
absolutely.
Evan Rachel Wood and her activist feminist girlfriend, possible accused hoaxer. And they were recruited to join this. And when you look at all their individual stories, they fall apart. They don't make sense. They're not. I mean, those lawsuits are just ridiculous when you read the lawsuits. So, it's just, it really is, again, it's like a canary in the coal mine of what I think, unless things change, of what I think is coming down the road for a lot more people, which is where you just get a story started and people jump on the bandwagon and it just takes over.
Yep.
Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Yeah. Well, there's one thing that I will say is in her statement, I believe she had said that he isolated her from her family and things like that. Yeah, yeah. Evan Rachel Wood had said that Manson had isolated her from her family and, you know, didn't allow them there and everything else. Well, we, you know, my small group of friends, we had actually met her parents at I believe it was Miami. It was at the Hard Rock. I believe it was at Miami or something like that. But we were backstage and we actually got to meet them. And, you know, the reason I'm bringing that up is it's like, if he's so hell bent on keeping her separated, like, would you really give them VIP and like to an open bar and like just the whole VIP experience of being back there if you were trying to keep them away? You know, that doesn't jive with me at all. Like that makes no sense, you know, and, you know, they seemed decent to me. You know, I think I met them twice and they were both backstage in the VIP.
Met Evan Rachel Wood's parents twice on this
Yeah.
20-day tour period that you were with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he isolated her from her family so much that he invited them to be around twice in a 20-day period.
Right. Well, I mean, they might have even been there more than that, to be honest. I don't know.
But you personally around twice in 20-day period.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
And did you ever see him acting like a sullen?
Well, I wouldn't say, I don't know if it was 20-day, like not consecutive days, but.
No, I understand. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But yeah, like 2 times through the shows that we saw, where we actually met them.
You never saw him acting like sullen or mean for the parents or Evan Rachel Wood or away or whatever.
Yeah. Nope. Nothing like that. So yeah, I brought that up just because I thought that was odd, you know. Plus there's plenty of photos like, you know, I know that you're aware of the Instagram account Stand By Your Manson, but they have a ton of really great content and, you know, just pokes so many holes in all this stuff. And there's photos on there of Evan and Manson with her family. You know, they're in like Disney World and, you know, like one's like in Christmas time and like they all look happy. And it's like, you know, Manson, the family, man, like, you know, I don't believe that for a second that he was like, you know, trying to keep them away from her or anything like that. And in my opinion, if there was any of that, it was probably from her. Like she was sort of a rebel kind of, that was her like kind of mentality then, I think, you know, so.
That's what she projected, being really like tough and everything. Yeah.
You know,
not who was like basically like a sort of a submissive, naive, inexperienced teenager that was being
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's just laughable in my opinion, you know. She knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't like this, like, you know, dumb little girl that, you know, that's how she liked to, I was a child, I think she called herself like in her testimony. And it's like, come on, give me a break. Like, you were 20, 21, you knew what you were doing. Like, she didn't act that way at all. You know, like she partied. It was nothing like that at all. You know, he wasn't there manipulating her to do all these things or drink or whatever. Like, you know, she was, like I said before, she was having the time of her life, enjoying herself, you know, which who the hell wouldn't, you know, if you're in that experience and you're of that age. So yeah, not even in the slightest.
Wow. Was there something else that you wanted to mention too?
One other thing that I would just say, which just kind of shows like his attitude toward her, as far as like thoughtfulness, as like, you know, in one of the photos that I sent you, like, I presented a painting to Manson that I did, which he owns. which was like my homage to Edgar Allan Poe. And Evan was a huge fan, was or is a huge fan of Edgar Allan Poe, and has actually a tattoo on her neck, I believe, from a quote from Poe. And when I presented it to Manson, he was like very excited to show her, because he knew that she was into Poe. Like, oh, look at what he's given me. Like, he was like, you know, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging or anything, like, but he was happy to receive it, and he was happy to show her, you know. So in my opinion, it was just like a subtle thing. You know, a lot of people might say, oh, that's nothing, but it's one of those things, like, it's like, if you get something and you know that someone's going to enjoy it, you want to share it with them, or, you know, just to get their reaction about it, you know. So that's really, you know, just that little thing that I thought was interesting.
Well, you bring up the painting thing. So so what kind of work do you do? I see all this stuff in the back. What is the painting? What is the painting of the person kind of to the right of the mirror behind you?
Oh, that's called the portent. It's an oil painting. That's probably one of the latest paintings that I've done. But yeah, I mean, I'd say my work is primarily of a darker nature, dark art, some surrealism to it. It's also figurative. But I work in a variety of mediums. So like mixed media, watercolor, oil, and, you know, digital even. So, you know, by trade, I'm a designer as well. So that's sort of, you know, what I went to school for primarily, for university anyway. So,
you know, and again, like, just kind of, I would say, getting back to the video now, you know, one thing I would say to the audience too is like, those of you who have some objections to this, like, oh, well, it's a Manson fan, or, oh, it's, you know, it's a guy or whatever. But I hope that you will look at some of my other videos, some of my other interviews with Manson's former personal assistant, Paula, a couple of ex-girlfriends. And there's definitely, look, if we're thinking about this in legal terms, there's definitely more than enough reasonable doubt. And when you actually dig into the lawsuits, when you actually look at the allegations, the inconsistencies and the problems with the accusers and their statements and all of this, it's not enough to cancel this guy. And I mean, I would just be happy, even if people want to walk away from this situation saying, well, I don't know if he did it or not, but there's just not enough to like say to this guy, like, oh, you're out. That's just not.
yeah, exactly. You know, and there's, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. I was just going to say that there's a lot of people that probably even have more pertinent information and experiences than I have, who are just being silent because they don't want the blowback. They don't want to deal with, you know, things that could happen, or, you know, just hate or whatever. And, you know, and I put it off for a while, but, you know, it's the right thing to do. And, you know, I think it's important for people to stand up for people that you give a shit about. Even if, you know, even if you think that your voice doesn't matter, I think that it does matter in the end. You know, you just have to, you got to stand up for people that you care about. And if you see an injustice, you also have to stand up for it. You know, I have a hard time dealing with that. So yeah, I mean, it was eating at me for a while. So I know that there's a lot of people that are probably even watching this that it's probably eating at them too. And, you know, I would say, you know, people should just, you know, say fuck it and go for it, you know, like say their voice and, you know, give their experience, because, you know, whether they like Manson or not, like it's the right thing to do, you know, and that's sort of my viewpoint on it.
Well, I think that's right. And I think and I think to those people, I would say also the blowback will be less than you think it might be, actually, because actually for the people that I've already interviewed, there's been basically like almost no blowback, except from like just some occasional like crazy people, right, of just saying stupid shit.
Right. The trolls.
a lot of people look, a lot of people actually are smarter than the media, and they are smarter than this. And like when you talk to people, I brought this up with people who don't even follow all of this or don't even care about Marilyn Manson, but kind of vague about it. And then when you say like, well, I think maybe it's a hoax, or I think maybe it's just a kind of a media sensationalized thing, and they're like, oh yeah, I know the media, they're liars, and people are liars, and they're media hungry and all of that. Like people actually understand this on a basic level, and so it's really about just kind of getting to a point where people like you and others, and there's kind of a critical mass, and Kanye, bless his heart,
Right.
so like who are just like, hey, no, we know this is bullshit, and just kind of standing up to it. And so, yeah, to people who haven't said anything, I would say actually there's not that much blowback. It's as you would think. It's just that it's just that people, I think that Manson to some degree got caught off guard with this. This kind of reared out of nowhere, and I see he's fighting it now in court, and he is claiming in court that it's a conspiracy and so forth. So, I mean, he is fighting it. He is. It's just that he got knocked back a bit because it was a coordinated attack. And
I mean, it's a lot. That's a lot to take on. I mean, I put myself in his position, and it's like, man, like that's a lot to take on, especially someone of his stature. Just and the amount of planning that went into this, unless people actually like look at the facts and all the little things, the fact that after these abuse instances happened, like these people went and stayed fans and went to shows afterward, and like, even Evan, she did interviews and talked, positively of Manson in like, I think up to like 2016. I mean, you're not talking about like, a short span of time. I mean, this is quite a bit of time. And, I know some people can't heal from like, things. It takes time for actual like abuse or trauma or whatever. But, I think that's the minority and not the majority. I think most people, if they feel abused, they know they're abused, and they certainly wouldn't be conducting interviews and talking positively of their own free will to someone that did all these, heinous acts against them. Like that just seems ridiculous in my opinion, so.
Right. And, and then when we get into like Esme Bianco and some of the others where they're just laughable stories with so many inconsistencies. And then sort of at the bottom of the barrel, you have people like Chloe Black, who filed the Jane Doe lawsuit against her. But Chloe Black, who is basically out there like trying to piggyback the release of her single, she's a musician, and trying to piggyback the release of her single or her album on the back of her Manson allegations, and then a week or several days later saying, it was just a coincidence, that these two things came out at the same time. And then she said it's just a coincidence that the song I released was actually referencing the Manson allegation. Come on. I mean, like basically they're just saying, like, she's just saying what she's doing here. He's like, I made up this story, and then I wrote a song about it, and then I timed it so it would come out at the same time as these allegations.
Just because I was bitter, for whatever reason, maybe he didn't pick me, like, and I think that, in my opinion, that's a lot of the cases here is like, it's no coincidence that Manson just got married. He's sort of like happy, just released an album. Like, they timed it pretty well. And I think that there's a whole lot of bitterness that caused this whole thing, and
it does hope. It does seem like too, when you when you look at just in general, this is nothing, no comment on the person he's currently with, right, Manson. But when you look at his dating history and some of these ladies, I mean, especially with the accusers, like, I'm sorry, but we're just not, and we're not supposed to be able to say this, but it's pretty clear we're not talking about the most stable people here in the set of accusers. And and Manson's long-term partners, his current, his wife right now, and Dita Von Teese, and Rose McGowan, Me Too poster child. None of them have alleged abuse. In fact, they've said the opposite. And so what we're getting, like you said earlier in this interview, what we're getting like a small slice of women who know, generally speaking, already knew each other, who were recruited by Evan Rachel Wood and her current, and her, at the time, activist lesbian girlfriend. And I just say that because it's a part of the mix in this. Yeah. And Esme Bianco, who I think when you actually look into her story, I mean, it just falls apart. I mean, go look at one of my videos where I talked about it. I'm not even going to get into it here, but it just kind of all, when you really look into it, it all gets really laughable. And so, but people don't know that. And all they see is, oh, there's 15 accusers or something. So anyway, thank you for doing this interview. I really appreciate it. I hope that people take this into account along with the other interviews that I've done, and look at some of my other videos where I break down these allegations and talk about problems with them and why I believe Manson is innocent. And to anybody who's watching this who would like to come on and talk about your experience, contact me, because yes, there are other people who know the truth on this as well. And I've actually talked to some of them behind the scenes too, and they're reluctant to come forward for obvious reasons. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And,
absolutely.
And to everybody watching, I'll be continuing to cover this in the future. Have hopefully more interviews for you, and at least watching as things develop. And we'll see you later. Bye bye, everybody.